Are you looking for a podcast where you can hear from real people regarding their real dental drama? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join hosts Bethany Petty and Dr. Rena Kuba as we dive into the solutions we've created and the mistakes we've made while managing dental drama. Let's get started. Happy Monday. You guys are diving right into the middle of an episode that we started last week regarding whether or not your practice needs an office manager. We will literally pick up almost mid-sentence here. So if you didn't get to listen to last week, I encourage you to go back, check that out, and then come right back and join us today. Oftentimes, if we're hiring from outside of a practice and bringing a manager in, I tell my clients oftentimes, you let them know, I want you to eventually fulfill the manager role, but I need you to ingratiate into our culture first. And so yes, you will eventually be in a leadership role, but there's a 6-month timeline where you're learning different aspects of the practice, because it's unfair for them to come in and be like, oh, boom, day one, office manager. You don't know anything about our culture. You don't know anything about our patient base. You hardly know about the services we provide and how we do billing and how we do this, but manage. Well, what do you mean manage? That's really hard. Yeah, you can have them come in. You're managing this little segment until you learn more about that could be you're managing time off requests. And that's the only thing that I expect you to do initially. And then we'll add more on. So I feel like if you're going to go with the management model, if you're hiring from within, equip your manager. Train them. Invest in them before putting that burden on them. If you're hiring from without, it's the same exact model. Invest in them. Expose them to education. Expose them to other office manager groups. There's some great, you've done this as well, the
ADOM?
Yeah, thank you. It was leaving me. ADOM group, where they have this network of other office managers. They've got a social media group where those office managers can ask each other questions. They have a conference that they put on once a year where all these office managers coming together in one place. Pay the money. Put your office manager in that group. That exposure to other office managers is going to only do good for them. And again, a lot of times we don't want that. We're like, no, I hired you to manage, just manage, and I don't need to invest all this money into you. Well, poo-poo on you. That's unfair to your office manager. Don't you need continuing education to continue to be a better doctor? Sure, you've been through your program, but you continue to refine your skills every single year. Your office manager should have the same exposure to that, and you need to be willing to invest in them for that. I would say, too, if we hire from the outside, it's preparing your team. Hey, I am looking at an office manager. This is why we need to shift to an office manager model, and have some legitimate reasons, because your team needs to accept and adopt the idea that we're moving to a manager model before that manager is brought in, because the last thing you want is your team fighting against that office manager as soon as she's brought on board.
So all of this conversation, kind of backtracking to where we started, was we are tired and can I just punt to an office manager and that make life so much easier? So, because I think a lot of us want to believe that so bad. And now everything you've just said has exhausted me, honestly, because I'm like, oh my God, that is so much work to do. And I'm never going to find this unicorn. And even when I do, then and I keep saying she, I guess it could be a he too, it's just going to, I'm going to invest all this in them and then they're going to leave and then I'm going to be high and dry and like whatever, right? So now I'm just like, ugh, I'm exhausted at this thought. Like, fine. I won't hire a manager then because it seems just about near impossible. I probably could climb Mount Everest first before making this work in my office. Thank you for not giving me 1 ounce of hope in this. Okay, so my plan B then, you know what? I'm going to ride the bandwagon that everybody else is. Private equity, come and get me, right? So this might be a good way to segue into the next conversation, next episode. But is that the answer then? Should I just sell it?
Well, and the only other thing that I'll say that you've done that I think is a good alternative to this office manager model is the leadership approach. And I think that's what you've done is you've dispersed that manager title a bit. And oddly enough, I feel like, and we haven't even talked about this yet, but I think the way we've been running our leadership meetings has elevated the, not necessarily enthusiasm, but the integration of other team members that might have just tapped out. I'm not thinking about that. I'm not problem solving. I've got your office manager in place. She'll solve it. And I feel like you've been focusing more on dispersing that leadership among a few key people, but we've been inviting team members into those leadership meetings. And I feel like that has been something that's elevated some of our team members that may not have.
And my answer to that is going to be, I think that's to be determined. I don't know that we have. I don't know that we have. So I'm glad you see it that way, because maybe
I'm just sparks there that haven't been there before.
I see nothing. I see potential more problems, honestly. And I still feel like the main one who manages a lot of the problems, like she's still regardless. Yeah. And some of these people have been now to these meetings now 5-6 times, and yet they still are the ones that require so much management when we get back. So I'm waiting for that spark to really erupt into a flame, and
so then that brings me back to your question.
I don't even see a spark. I see smoke, like one little puff every now and then.
Well, and again, I think it goes back to everybody's got a ceiling. We've got to adjust our expectations of people. And I know that's not fair and that's not right. But whether you're a practice owner or whether somebody else owns your practice, you're going to be working with people that don't live up to what we think they should be able to do. I think removing the practice ownership cap doesn't solve all problems. The problems are still there. You may feel like they're no longer your problem, but they are. You're showing up to work to do dentistry alongside the same people that you've always...
Okay, you've already ruined the hope, put the flame out and the office manager candle there. Like, please, I'm just going to sell and that will solve everything. The end. Stay tuned.
So every DSO wants you to believe. I mean, yes.
I'm drinking the juice. I believe it. Everything's going to be...
I believe.
Everything's going to be better. I just need to sell. And then I can just do my dentistry, right? Because they're not going to tell me what I need to do and that I have to change anything. They're going to be right there next to me. Like a country club. You can come... Literally, I've been told that. No, it's like a country club. Like, you can use whatever services that they have. They offer this menu of services, and you could choose to use, or you could choose not to. Okay. But anyway, it
sounds
still...
like heaven, which we're still alive.
Easy button. Easy button.
Yeah. I would caution all listeners to... There is no easy button. And I know that's depressing.
I don't want to hear it. I'm leaving the closet right now and not coming back again for another 8 episodes. Like, I'm gone.
So if y'all were wondering if there was a fight before, there is now.
There is now.
She's resigned. She's leaving the podcast.
You're supposed to be like unicorns and rainbows, Bethany. Like,
I sell reality. I don't sell unicorns and rainbows. But reality still has an upside. And I do hope that's the takeaway from this. I know it's been depressing to talk about, but there are solutions if we're willing to kind of invest in those solutions. And just, I think you can get things off of your plate, whether that's with a manager that you train and equip and you invest in, or whether that's with a leadership team. I do think you can punt some things off your plate, but is it going to be perfect? No. Is it going to be easy all the time? No. Are you going to have moments of easiness? Yes, you will. And I think that is the reality, whether you own or whether you sell to private equity. There's going to be moments of easy. There's going to be moments of hard. It is what it is. It's life.
And, again, reality, Rena, I agree with you. But it just, in these moments, it's like, there's got to be an easier way. I'm just being dumb and I'm missing it. And somebody's offering me an easier way. And why am I not taking it? And so that's been the path I've been on the last couple of weeks. And I'm back down with you. Like, I'll quit being funny. But I wish there was something that was easier. But I think, reality is it could be harder. Like, maybe that's where I need to think about it. Instead of I want easy, I want less hard. And so
Yeah.
To expect easy is a fool's mission. Like, that's not going to happen. But is there...
Yeah, I would agree completely. Is there less hard? I think that's the question. Not is there an easy button? Is there a less difficult way? Am I missing a path that might be a little bit less difficult? And that is, I can say 100% of the time, yes, there's likely a less difficult path.
But that's where I'm going. But is that the sell my practice path?
Potentially.
Okay.
I think that's a potential along with a lot of other potentials. I think what's happening right now is the culture is first of all, that's the easy path is what people think. That solves everything. And I think that is foolery to think that. So is it an option? Absolutely. But don't be fooled into thinking that's your only option or that is the easy.
So for me, like, I guess, and this is where I've been the last couple of weeks, and I'm finally off of that ledge. And again, not that it's wrong for anybody else. It just, I've realized that is not the right fit for me at this time. But not just ease and not just, what was the other thing you just said? Is it easy or is it
less hard? Is it?
Yeah. But so even all of that where I'm just like, yeah, it may not be easy, it may not, but is it the smartest thing I could do? Mm-hmm. And so am I being dumb right now and not considering it? And that's where I was like, I mean, yes, we're being told, at least I don't know about anybody else. I'm being told, it seems like almost every other day, that so-and-so sold and things are better and so-and-so this and that's better. And at least from a smart standpoint, now is the time where the industry's consolidating and it won't be the same set of buyers and same set of circumstances 5 or 6 years from now. Yes, you'll have buyers, obviously, but not like right now where you could sell, and become a part of a 30, 40, 50, 100 person group. But at some point that's going to hit the peak where then they turn around and sell to a bigger group. Mm. And so now I've made my money selling originally, and then once that group sells, I'm going to make more money. And then in the meantime, I've had the original sum of money that I could be investing and making money on. And then I'll have access to this group's investment platforms. And then once we sell again, I'll get all of that again, plus my salary because I'm still working. And so, I think for me, it's like, even though I'm not I'm not a numbers, the money-minded person, but I don't want to be dumb and miss this opportunity. Mm-hmm. So that for me, it's like, well, yes, I know I could turn around and sell in 10 years or 6 years, but what's happening right now is I am frustrated and tired as hell, and I could make more money now. Mm-hmm. So if I was being intelligent, is that what I should be doing? Mm-hmm. And so that's the kick I've been on. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think the reason I'm so passionate about talking about this is we make certain decisions when we're tired. We come into, we're dragging in, right? And it's, I'll be honest, I mean, since the pandemic, life has been hard. In a lot of ways, life has just been harder, especially for my clients. I don't feel like things have gotten any easier. And so I think we've got to be careful about dragging ourselves to the most important decision we can make when it comes to our practice. And it's like, okay, well, what are you telling me, Bethany? Like, get happy and then make a decision? In essence, yes. I feel like we make a better, more well-informed, non-emotional decision when we focus on what can I do in my practice to make it easier, to make me happier in it. And I think if we invest a little bit of time there, you may come right back around to, all right, now with a clear head, I'm making the decision to sell. And I'm like, yes, go for it. I'm with you in that moment. I think the reason I've been pushing you back to go pause, think, is I don't want this to be an emotional decision. Like, I'm so tired. I am looking for the easy button. All the financial things sound really good, so it sounds like a smart decision. And I caution all of my clients, don't make any decision when you're in a fatigue state.
But we've been in a fatigue state since before the pandemic. So I don't think this fatigue state is going away. So how am I getting to that point of like, yay, I'm happy, now's the time to sell? Like I just don't see the light at the end of the tunnel.
I don't know that there has to be light at the end of the tunnel. I think we figure out how do we make the best possible decisions right now. And it may not get me back to this state where I'm living in light and bliss and rainbows. And I think honestly, if we were to look back, we always look back hindsight and we go, oh, things were so good when, right? That's our human nature to just be like, oh, you remember back when? And we forget. This is why women have multiple children. We forget how horrible pregnancy and birth and nursing a child is, right? Because we forget the hardships and we look back and we remember this beautiful birth scenario where I was holding my newborn baby and it was just all perfect. No, she ripped my vagina and I had to be stitched up. Like, it was hard. But we don't think about that. And so I think sometimes we look back to even pre-pandemic and we're like, it was so glorious and blissful. No, the problems still existed. It's just when we look back, they feel like they were lesser problems, because that's our human nature to go back and remember differently. But I will give you, I do feel like life has continued to be hard. We've got all this economic stuff going on. Our staff is stressed differently than they used to be. We have less staff than we used to have. So there are new problems. They're different than the old problems, but they're still problems. And so when we sell, are there going to be no problems? No, there will just be different problems.
And I think that's where I tend to fool myself a lot going, but no, again, it's not going to be, somebody will be there with me to help figure out this problem because they're trying to make it this investment. And so they don't want this ship to sink.
Right.
And so they're going to do everything they can to help me continue to be successful because I'm part of the cog that's going to help generate a lot of money for all of us. But then I stop and I go, okay, I mean, yeah, that sounds like a good, it's possible, but how are you going to do that different? Like, do you have a pool of employees that you're going to pull from? Are you going to find the manager and train the manager? And then if you find and train the manager, but is that what's going to work in my practice? And so then I start going, okay, and that's finally where I've finally now hit the spot of going, yeah, that's not for me right now. And it was funny. One of the, who was it? It was a gentleman that at the Abilene thing that we were talking about, who had talked about how he had just sold his practice and how happy he is and how great it's been, and they didn't change anything and he's still running his practice the way he did. And in my mind, I'm like, well, I don't want to hear that. Because like, if nothing changed, like I was hoping this would be the easy button to make it better. But then he said to me, because we I caught him after the lecture and I was kind of, chatting with him, and he said, if you are selling to make money, then that is not the reason to sell. Mm-hmm. And I went, I said to you in the car on the way home, I said, but that is the only reason I would sell, because I don't see how they're going to help my problems. Mm-hmm. And the problems are still going to be there, but now I potentially have less control, or maybe I still have the same amount of control, but I'm it's not all my practice. So why would I want all control when the point was to bring somebody else in to help? So for me, the only reason I would sell is to capitalize on that private equity wave that people keep talking about. Yeah. So then I was like, well, if he just told me that's the reason I shouldn't sell, and that's the only reason I would sell, that's no good. And then I was talking to my dad kind of about, all of this stuff and what he thinks about it. And my dad, is not a dentist, but he's been an entrepreneur. He knows how to hustle. He knows how to, he came to the U.S. in his 40s and had multiple businesses and just hustled, right? So he's got a strong dose of common sense and the way of the world and all of that. So I kind of just said, hey, like, what do you think about this? And I know, like, he is so proud that I have my own practice. Mm-hmm. He's always telling me, never work for somebody else. You should always work for yourself. And, whether I believe that or not, at some point it's like, you've heard that from your daddy your whole life. Like, it's kind of in the back of your mind. Like, you almost feel like a failure if you didn't meet up to that. Which, by the way, both my sisters work for big corporations. So, but I think just some of that going, like, he's most proud of me because I own my own business, right? He's so proud of my office and all of that. And so I was like, yeah, but when you think about it from a financial standpoint, like, I thought maybe I could get him on that. And then he was like, do you think, like, if you have to sign on for a minimum of 3 years, let's say I got lucky and I negotiated a 3-year instead of a 5-year or whatever, do you think that you're going to get to come and go as you please? Like right now, you've got days where you're done at noon, or you've got days that you go in a little bit later. He's like, you don't think they're going to make you bust it from like 7 to 5? Like, so you've never wanted to work till 5. You don't think they're going to come and make those changes or expect certain things out of you? And I was like, well, but they say they're not going to have you do anything different. Like, you're going to continue to run the way you always run. And he just kind of was like, okay, does that even make sense? And then I said, okay, well, you've always taught me work now, play later. So if I've got 3 years of being miserable, but is that not worth me putting in that 3 years to come out like double the income, double the sale that I could? And he was just like, he just looked at me like, you're an idiot. And I was like, oh. So I don't know. And I was like, well, I want you to think about it, because maybe I should be selling sooner so that I can have that money to invest now to whatever. And then he said, he goes, okay, say you survive the 3 years, then what are you going to do? And I said, well, why do I have to do anything? So why do I have to do anything? Like, my mom didn't work. Yeah. You hustled. Like, she didn't. There's plenty of stay-at-home moms, plenty of stay-at-home dads. Why do I have to do anything? If I've sold my practice for $1 million, like, haven't I done my share? Like, like, why do I have to do anything? And so he did not like that answer, which surprised me, though, because I'm like, the mentality of an Indian male, like, I'm the breadwinner, the wife stays at home with the kids, and that's what you did. Yeah. But now I'm supposed to have a different standard. Like, I'm supposed to hustle. Like, why is that fair? So anyway, but he's like, so then we both just, there was a moment of silence, and we both just started laughing. I was like, can you see me doing nothing? Like, my personality type. He's like, yeah, you wouldn't make it a day. And I'm like, true. And then, the idle mind is a devil's mind or whatever. And I'm like,
well, don't want to have a devil's mind, so
maybe I do. Like, I've not low these years. Let me try that for a spin. Like,
but the good thing about all of this, though, as I'm listening to you, is you are pausing, right? You are thinking, you are digesting, you're having conversations, you're getting perspective, you're chewing on it personally. Like, what is my intent? What is my goal? You asked a question of somebody recently, like, well, why did you own your practice in the first place? Why did you start a practice in the first place? What was your intent with that? To me, that is the process that everybody should be walking through. It should be a soul-searching process, a collective conversation that's happening with multiple different people, with multiple different perspectives. You're evaluating yourself in the process, would I be fulfilled? Because it sounds rainbows and sunshine, and a human reality tells us that does not happen. And so what are going to be the potential problems on the other side of a sell? And again, we may be okay with those potential problems. All of this is to say, get yourself to a place where you aren't making this knee-jerk decision out of fear, out of this false urgency that's been thrust upon you, like you need to do it now or never. That's ridiculous. Like, don't allow yourself to be emotionally driven to a decision that you may or may not regret. It's similar to, I met this person 6 months ago and I'm going to marry him tomorrow. Ooh, that feels like a really rushed decision that could work, but it could also end very badly. Like, why don't we just take a minute? Let's take a beat, slow it down.
It's also, what's everybody else doing? Like, that's sadly, I fall into that trap all the time. Like, what's everybody else doing? Everybody else is selling, because it does feel like everybody and their dog is selling. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, am I the idiot that's not taking advantage of this opportunity? Yeah. And for what? Am I just, is it ego? Am I sticking my heels in the sand? Am I like, why am I not doing the smart thing that everybody else is doing?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that, maybe that's the fear, like you said, but it is, definitely looking at the easy button, and also the, maybe there is something and I'm being dumb and not looking at it.
Yeah.
And so, and that, I guess too, like some of the things that I think about too, then it's like, well, maybe then for me, it needs to be an all out sale, because maybe that's where if I don't have to do any of the managing at all, and I'm just a little worker bee that goes in, but then I need to think about that too. Well, then if I'm a worker bee in my buddy's office, but I hate their staff, I hate their materials, their forms suck, I'm going to get into a liability situation here.
And then I would say at the same time, as you're thinking about all of those options, what would I want if I got to this sell point? Like, what is my goal? What do I want life to look like on the other side of this? Which you should clearly have some expectations of what life will look like, because that needs to be a part of the negotiation process if and when you decide to sell. So I would say as you're thinking through all of that, you're also at the same time going, what can I do internally in my practice to make it smoother, to make it easier for me, happier for me?
I know, but I'm already tired, and now I got to think about all of that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I would say even
that's
if
your answer? Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
You do. It is.
Okay.
There's no easy button in life.
I don't like it.
And again, it's worth the difficult, because this is your blood, sweat, and tears. This is your greatest.
I got none of that left.
I know. You're like, I'm out of blood. I'm out of tears.
I'm out of tears. Like, I got nothing. Like a little prune over here. I'm just dried up.
Oh, my gosh.
You missed me, didn't you? You missed me.
I missed reality, Rena. Like, what are you talking about? More effort.
I know.
I've given enough.
Yes.
But again, in your dying breath of practice owner, it's like, fight for it. Fight for, if selling is where, you end up landing, or whoever's listening ends up landing, fight for it. Fight for what you want on the other side of that sale. Fight for contentment now in your practice. What can I do to make the life in between now and when I sell more enjoyable? It's worth it. You think of all you've put in. It's worth just that extra push.
So then I would say, like, again, jokes aside, and as you're saying that, I'm thinking, okay, well, but what are some tips to do that? Like, how do I get out of this funk and this mentality of, I'm so tired, I've got nothing left to give, I don't want to be patient anymore, I just don't see things getting better, blah, blah, blah. I think some realistic things that have helped me, one is making sure that I'm not sticking my head in the sand, because I am classically a head in the sand person. Like, pushing myself to make sure that I talk to people. And if I've talked to 5 people that are like, sell, I've got to go out of my way to find 5 people that are like, whoa, practice life is good, here's where we are. So to make sure that I'm balancing the pros and the cons the right way, I think even like non-dental people, I think that's been helpful too. Because I think we do tend to think, oh, poor me, poor us. But it's like when you think about across other industries. So, for example, my sister, she works for a big corporation, and just some of the things that she deals with over there. And we've had some good conversations where a lot of what she's griping about, I'm like, oh, honey, like, and because like she, they had this reorganization in her company where she's now like the director of these 3 things. This is phenomenal. And all she's doing is like, why did they do this to me? They must hate me. They've given me all of this. And I'm just like, are you out of your mind? And I had to tell her, I was like, I'm not trying to be rude to you, but you are not that special. You're not that special that they're going to stop and go, how do we make life hard for that one? Like, they're looking at it from a strategic standpoint, and it made sense to do this. And it actually is a good thing for your career path. You don't like change. And so you're in this victim mentality, like, they must hate me to do this to me. You are not that special that they're going to sit there and think about you that long and hard. And then I've been able to say, like, in my office, so in my tiny little rink-dink, you're talking about Yum Corporation, my little rink-dink office with just me and my 10 employees, as a boss, like, this is what I think about when I'm assigning a task. And so it's funny how she can it helps her feel better that it's a completely different field and a completely different environment and setting, yet the principle's still the same, and vice versa. Like, just talking to somebody who's not in dental and looking at the challenges of a workplace is super helpful. So I would say, reaching out to your other colleagues, because I think that helps me go, I'm not any special either. Like, everybody's working hard. Yeah. Everybody's having to deal with change. Like, oh, it was called life. Right. Yeah. So it's not just me, right? So I would say that would be another point that I would say, don't recluse yourself. Mm-hmm. And don't keep talking to the same type of person. Like, if everybody around you is selling, seek out somebody who's a little different. I think the other thing that has been really good for me, which in a bad way, it's like I wasn't here to podcast, but I have been, we went to Abilene and I got to meet people and talk to people. And I'm an introvert. I hate that. I was dreading all of it, but it was good for me to hear things. And then this last Friday, I was at our TAPD spring session was in Dallas. And so I went to that. And honestly, I didn't even really talk to any other dentists per se, but just kind of listening to what people in other industries, our speakers were, one in hospitality and one with HR or something. But it was just kind of like, again, it was kind of a point to maybe make me go, this is across every industry. This is not just us. And so I think that gives me some peace anyway. Yeah. And going, easy button's not going to work for you or you or you. Why would I think it would work for me? Like, it's dumb. Yeah. But again, once you're in this bubble where everybody's, quote, everybody's telling you this, maybe I'm not listening to everybody. Yeah. And I need to make sure I'm listening to everybody and keeping my ears open.
I think that perspective, just taking a different perspective, forcing yourself to hear a different perspective is so important. It's funny. I love like nature shows, and so I was watching this. Will Smith did one. I don't know how many years ago, called Earth, and so they were watching the wildebeest in Africa, and their whole segment was on the swarm mentality, and how ultimately the wildebeest, bees, birds, birds can fly in this pattern because of this swarm mentality that they have. They don't get too far from the neighbor in front of them. They don't get too close. And then wherever the neighbor moves, the other neighbor moves. So if you think of like birds flying in a pattern, you can really see it clearly. And so they were watching these wildebeest, because these wildebeest are dumb and they have swarm mentality, which means they all migrate together, like 1 million of them all together migrate this 300-mile path, whatever. And so they're trying to catch the crossing of this river that they have. In order to have enough grass, they have to cross this river to get to the other side. And so these 1 million wildebeest have to do it. And so you watch, and this one breaks the swarm pattern. They're all about to go into the river that's filled with crocodiles, and this little baby wildebeest gets taken out by the crocodile. You see it screaming down the whole river, and you're like, that's so sad. But when all the wildebeest decide together to cross, they all cross at the same time. It's this huge, beautiful scene with all this dust and beauty and all this kind of stuff. And so Will's watching this, and you'll see wildebeest getting taken out in the process by the crocodiles. But most of them make it across. And so sometimes I feel like when we're talking about this, right now, the swarm mentality that we keep hearing, just sell, sell, sell. And so all these practice owners, I won't equate it to wildebeest, but it's like, sometimes do we just get into the swarm and we're just like, oh my gosh, everybody, I gotta cross the river too. And I might get taken out by the crocodile, but should I just follow the herd? And I'm like, we're smarter than wildebeest. We gotta be logical enough.
All of us? Am I?
Yeah, you're smarter than wildebeest.
I really question that statement, but okay.
But we gotta be willing to kind of not just get so frenzied in that moment, like, oh my gosh, I got to do what everybody else is doing. I guess I got to cross. It's like, pause long enough. I know that's the energy, and that's the mode that I feel like we're all hearing about right now. Just sell. You got to sell. You got to cross the river to the other side. You got to. And I think sometimes we just got to pause. We are not a swarm animal. We're not. We are able to think through things on our own. We don't need to always be looking at what everybody else is doing. Change your perspective. If the swarm around you is saying sell, 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 what else can you expose yourself to? Because that's not the only option. Let's think through what else our options are before, and you may come right back to that decision. But I think that perspective of other people is really helpful.
And I think because I'm sitting here going, is it just me? But I'm like, no, actually, like everything I read, like, we get our ADA newsletters, physical and via email. We get, what else was it? Like Dental Town.
Dental economics.
I can't tell you one thing. Like everything I'm picking up now, and maybe for the last year to 2 years, there's always at least one article or multiple that are talking about DSOs. So I'm like, where did I get this from? Like, is it just me? I'm like, no, it's in everything I'm reading and everything I'm seeing. And so it is where you're going, am I an idiot? Am I an idiot? I need to read these things. I need to look into this. So anyway, I guess maybe I need to stop reading.
No, I think you're doing the exact right thing. You're wrestling with it. Like, oh yes, I'm continually being exposed, but I think I would, I guess, caution our listeners to go, that's the swarm mentality right now. It's like, everybody's got to do this. We got to do this. We got to do this. And, I can think years ago, the big question as I would sit with people is, do you think, Bethany, that we're all headed towards DSO? And at the time, and I'll say it again, I said it back then and I'll say it again, which is no. The dental field is never going to be 100% owned by DSOs.
True, but is it the smart ones are and the dummies aren't? Like, that's my next thought is like, am I the dumb one who's spending all this more on supplies? I get the less reimbursement because it's not power in numbers. At least if there's a DSO, maybe if I got sued, they would help, absorb that and help it make it go away. But right now, I'm like Lone Ranger on this mountaintop waiting for...
There's pluses and minuses to both sides. There's pluses and minuses to DSOs. There's always pluses and minuses to private practice. But I sit and think about a 100% DSO dental market, and that scares the heck out of me. I've got a town that I work in, and one hospital kind of owns all the medical providers. You have one option of medical providers that are all affiliated with this. Think of quality of care. Your options go down. The mentality goes down, right? We will never be, and that's one town. That is not common, right? There's always a place for the little guy in most metropolitan areas. This is kind of a small town in and of itself, by itself. There's always going to be private practice. I don't think we'll ever hit a point where all the little guys are gone. And honestly, I think that's best. I think there needs to be plenty of DSOs. There's a beauty to them. They work well in a lot of ways, but they do not cover the needs of every person. In order to have a really healthy dental environment, there always has to be the private practice, and there always will be. There always will be. Now, the momentum over these last few years, the articles that are coming out, the amount of doctors that have sold and are incentivized to get more people to buy in or to be bought in to this particular idea or this corporate, it is out there. There is definitely a wave. But once that wave passes, 6 years from now or whatever the projection is, there will still be private practice. We're not going to miss this, like, oh gosh, I've got to get into DSO before they own 100% of the market. They will never own 100% of the market. The seminar that we sat in, saturation level is 60%. 60%, which means that when it's all said and done and DSO owns all that they want to own, which I say, will they ever be fully satisfied? I think not. I think they'll always buy. At the end of the day, there will still be 40% that is privately owned. So get perspective. Think through it. Again, DSO may be the right fit for a lot of people, but go through the process to make sure before you sign on the dotted line and give away your best investment. Not give away, sell your best investment. And then the other perspective is consider the option that, could I own? Do I want to own to the end? And that is still a viable option. I think in the heat of all this context, we lose that as an option, and that is still an option.
And again, I don't mean to beat a dead horse here, and I hear everything you're saying, but I think part of me goes, okay, but is that the smart thing to be doing? Because
smart by what standard?
Well, but they can poach employees and offer them a lot more, woo them, whether they deliver or not, I don't know. But the point is, the employee's gone. And then my profit margin's going down because I can't negotiate the best insurance because I'm a number of one. So all of that, I just start going like, yes, there will be a buyer, but then I start going, okay, well, if I sold my practice today for $1,000 to, the valuation was $1,000 and private equity was going to come in and give me $3,000, but I hang on and I'm in that 40% when this has died down. But who can afford that $1,000 at that point? Like, will I even be able to sell it for $1,000? Because then I'll look at who the buyers are, who are all heavily entrenched in debt. Banks aren't giving them money, according to what Manny was saying, last couple of episodes. It's a generation that really values work-life balance. Well, that's not the generation I grew up with, right? Mm-hmm. And so who of them is going to want to spend $1,000 for my practice when they could have spent $1,000 starting their own down the street? So maybe I'm going to get $800 for my practice. Still good money, but damn, did I miss that window where I could have sold for $3,000 to private equity. And I think that's what's still, I'm still struggling with that. You know what the main thing that's keeping me from pursuing it more is I'm so tired. And I'm like, I'm not smart enough to negotiate with the private equity right now. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get eaten alive. And so I'm not going to do this right now because I'm too tired and I don't want to know what all I need to know to go in and negotiate successfully because I know I'm not going to do it well right now.
Well, and I would say too, all that you just talked about is financial. All of it's financial. And to me, smart, you asked what's smart, is that the smart thing to do? Smart is so much more than just financial. Now, I would say let's say your $3,000 versus $800 equation. I would say to combat that, if you just look at, okay, I'm either selling today for $3,000 or I'm selling 20 years from now for $800. First of all, I would say that's probably not going to happen, but let's assume it is. The financial benefit that you've gained out of owning your practice over a 20-year period of time will far outweigh the $3,000. So practice ownership itself is still an incredibly valuable thing. So,
and I hear, and this is where, the numbers get me, but I guess my comment to that though, and I agree with you, that's all financial, but it is, but it isn't, because in the meantime, then if we're looking at my quality of life and what I want to do, and I can't do that because I can't keep staff because private equities pull them over. And so it's taking a lot more of me to manage and me to put out fires and me to do less dentistry and me to make less money because insurance companies aren't. And I need to find somebody who's going to fight that. But then that person doesn't show up to work. It's all kind of interrelated at a point. And
it is, but I can't tell you how many times I'm interviewing somebody for a client that is leaving corporate. They don't want corporate. You talk about the type of buyers that we're going to have in 10 years from now or 20. They're the type of employees we have right now. They don't like the corporate setting. It's not fulfilling to them. It's not satisfying. They don't feel integrated. They don't feel like they don't feel heard. They feel like a number. Those employees do not want to work for DSOs. Most oftentimes, somebody that I'm interviewing is leaving because it's a DSO. They changed ownership. This company bought them. It lost all feeling of the same doctor is still there. Yeah, same staff is still there. It feels different. What do you mean it feels different? I don't know. Feels like I'm not working for him anymore. Doesn't feel like I'm working towards anything good. I want private practice. So this idea that the corporate's going to woo them out. No, we live in a day and age with people that want to feel a certain way about the place that they show up for. Yes, are there financial benefits that the corporate may be able to beat us out on? Sure. But can they duplicate what a private owner can do? No, they will never be able to compete on that level. They won't. So I think that's an unrealistic fear as well.
Well, that's good to hear that, because I think that is one of my biggest fears. It's I'm not motivated by the financial, but I am in the sense of if this is going to be this damn hard and I'm not going to make it, I may as well get the most money I can. Maybe that's my consolation prize of going, well, you failed at running this business. You are every head on your hair that's left is gray. And so is that a bit of a dramatic viewpoint? Yeah. I'm not a very dramatic person, so I don't know where that's coming from.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to laugh so hard on that. Yeah, okay. No. Totally logical at all times. So.
Totally logical at all times. Me and emotion, no. Very, very practical.
Sorry. gonna control my laughter to wrap up this podcast. So
good luck.
All that to say, takeaway, get perspective, talk to multiple different people, don't make an emotional decision. And I would say the last one is smart is more than just financial.
And the swarm mentality. I would say just be wary of swarm.
Avoid the swarm mentality. We're not wildebeest. You're doctors, dang it. Don't be wildebeest.
I know, but I feel like a crocodile's coming to get me every time I turn around.
Thanks for joining the conversation today. We hope that you are comforted in knowing that you are not alone, but we also hope that you're walking away with some really great tips and tricks to try in your practice. We value your feedback, so please take a few moments to rate and review the podcast. Finally, we want to make sure that we're covering the topics that matter to you. So track us down on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what topics you want us to cover. As always, please know that we are rooting for you today as you manage your dental drama.